Hi everyone, and welcome. Tonight, we're taking a slow and relaxing journey through the fascinating world of musical instruments, from the very first sounds humans ever created, to the powerful and beautiful instruments we know today. We'll explore how instruments were crafted, how different civilizations shaped music, how technology transformed sound, and why certain tones can deeply calm the human mind. So dim the lights, get comfortable, and let the gentle story of music guide you into a peaceful and relaxing state. Now, let's begin. The origins of musical instruments, the first sounds of humanity. Long before written language, before cities and civilizations, humans were already creating music. The earliest musical instruments were not crafted with precision tools or complex designs, but born from curiosity, rhythm, and a deep connection to the natural world. In quiet moments, early humans discovered that sound could be shaped, repeated, and shared, and in doing so, they began one of the oldest traditions in human history. Some of the first instruments were likely the human body itself. Clapping hands, stomping feet, and vocal sounds formed natural rhythms. These simple actions created patterns that could be repeated, turning noise into something structured and almost meditative. Over time, this instinctive sense of rhythm became more refined, giving rise to early percussion instruments. Archaeological discoveries suggest that the oldest known musical instruments date back over 40,000 years. Among them are flutes made from bird bones and mammoth ivory, found in caves in Europe. These instruments were carefully carved, with finger holes placed in deliberate positions, suggesting that even early humans understood pitch and melody. The soft, airy tones of these ancient flutes would have echoed through caves, blending with the natural acoustics of stone walls. Nature itself was a powerful influence on the creation of instruments. Early humans observed how wind passing through hollow branches produced whistling sounds, or how striking different objects created varying tones. From this, they began experimenting, hollowing out wood, stretching animal skins over frames, or using stones and shells to create rhythmic sounds. Each material carried its own unique voice. The earliest drums likely came from stretched animal hides over hollow logs or pits in the ground. When struck, they produced deep, resonant sounds that could travel far. These drums were not only musical tools but also a means of communication, capable of sending signals across distances or marking important events within a community. String instruments also have ancient origins. Early versions may have developed from the simple observation that a stretched string vibrates when plucked. Hunting bows, for example, could produce sound when their strings were released. Over time, humans began to intentionally use this principle, creating primitive harps and lyres. These instruments introduced a new dimension to music, sustained tones and gentle melodies that could evoke calm and emotion. Music in these early times was not separated from daily life. It was part of rituals, storytelling, and social gatherings. Instruments were often used in ceremonies, accompanying dances or marking transitions such as seasons, births, or journeys. The sounds created were not just for entertainment, but for connection to each other and to the environment. What makes these early instruments especially fascinating is their simplicity. With minimal tools and materials, humans were able to create objects capable of producing complex and soothing sounds. This simplicity is part of what makes music universally accessible. Even today, the basic principles remain unchanged: vibration, resonance, and rhythm. As we listen to modern instruments, whether a piano, a violin, or a guitar, we are hearing the evolution of ideas that began tens of thousands of years ago. The quiet discovery that sound could be shaped into something meaningful has never left us. It continues to exist in every note played, every rhythm tapped, and every melody that gently fills the air. In the next part, we will explore how musical instruments evolved across ancient civilizations, and how different cultures shaped the sounds that still influence music today. The quiet evolution of musical instruments across ancient civilizations. As human societies grew more complex, so too did their musical instruments. What began as simple tools for rhythm and sound gradually transformed into carefully crafted objects, shaped by culture, environment, and imagination. Across ancient civilizations, instruments evolved not only in form but also in meaning, becoming symbols of identity, spirituality, and artistic expression. In ancient Mesopotamia, one of the earliest centers of civilization, music was already a refined art. Archaeological discoveries have revealed beautifully decorated lyres made of wood, adorned with gold, silver, and precious stones. These instruments were not merely functional, they were works of art. Musicians played them in royal courts and religious ceremonies, creating soft, flowing melodies that filled temples and palaces with a sense of calm order. In ancient Egypt, music held a sacred place in daily life. Instruments such as harps, flutes, and percussion tools were commonly used in both religious rituals and entertainment. Harps in particular were often large and elegantly curved, producing gentle, resonant tones. Wall paintings show musicians playing these instruments in serene settings, suggesting that music was deeply connected to spirituality and harmony. Moving east, in ancient China, musical instruments were developed with a strong philosophical foundation. Sound was believed to reflect the balance of the universe. Instruments like the guqin, a quiet and expressive string instrument, were played not for large audiences but for personal reflection. Its soft tones encouraged calmness, introspection, and a deep connection with nature. In ancient India, music was also intertwined with spirituality and storytelling. Instruments such as early versions of the sitar and tabla emerged over time, each designed to produce intricate rhythms and layered melodies. Music was seen as a path to understanding the universe, and instruments were treated with respect, almost as sacred objects. Meanwhile, in ancient Greece, music became closely linked to education and philosophy. Thinkers believed that music could shape character and influence emotions. Instruments like the lyre and aulos were used in both private study and public performances. The Greeks explored scales, harmonies, and the mathematical relationships between sounds, laying foundations that still influence music theory today. Across these civilizations, materials played a crucial role in shaping sound. Wood, bone, metal, and animal skins each contributed unique qualities. Craftsmanship improved as knowledge was passed down through generations, allowing instruments to become more precise and expressive. Subtle changes in shape or tension could transform the tone, creating a wide variety of sounds. What is especially fascinating is how different cultures, separated by great distances, developed instruments that shared similar principles. String vibration, air resonance, and rhythmic patterns appear again and again, suggesting a universal human instinct to explore sound in similar ways. Music during this time was rarely separated from life itself. It accompanied rituals, celebrations, storytelling, and even moments of quiet reflection. Instruments were not just tools for performance, but extensions of human emotion and thought. As civilizations connected through trade and exploration, musical ideas began to travel. Instruments influenced one another, blending styles and techniques. This quiet exchange of sound and craftsmanship set the stage for the rich diversity of musical instruments we know today. In the next part, we will explore how musical instruments became more refined during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, evolving into the familiar forms that still shape music in the modern world. The quiet refinement of musical instruments, from craft to precision. As time moved forward, musical instruments entered a new stage of development, one defined by refinement, precision, and a deeper understanding of sound. During the Middle Ages and especially the Renaissance, instrument makers began to transform simple designs into carefully engineered creations. What was once shaped by intuition alone gradually became guided by observation, experimentation, and growing knowledge. In workshops across Europe, skilled craftsmen devoted years to perfecting their instruments. Wood was no longer chosen only for availability, but for its acoustic qualities. Certain types of spruce, maple, and ebony were selected because they resonated in specific ways. Even the smallest detail, the thickness of the wood, the curve of a surface, or the tension of a string, could dramatically change the sound. String instruments, in particular, underwent remarkable evolution. Early versions of violins, violas, and cellos began to take recognizable forms. Makers discovered that the shape of the body influenced how sound waves moved inside the instrument. Curved surfaces allowed sound to resonate more fully, creating tones that were both rich and balanced. These instruments were not just tools, but carefully tuned systems designed to respond to the slightest touch. Keyboard instruments also began to emerge and evolve. Early versions of the harpsichord and clavichord introduced a new way of producing sound by pressing keys that triggered strings or metal tangents. This allowed musicians to play more complex compositions, with multiple notes and harmonies layered together. The quiet, precise motion of fingers on keys opened new possibilities for expression. Wind instruments became more sophisticated as well. Makers refined the placement of holes and the internal structure of pipes to improve control over pitch and tone. Instruments such as early flutes, recorders, and organs became more reliable and consistent, allowing musicians to perform with greater accuracy. What is especially fascinating about this period is the growing relationship between art and science. Instrument makers began to think not only as artisans, but as observers of physical principles. They studied vibration, resonance, and airflow, even if they did not yet use modern scientific language. Through careful experimentation, they learned how to shape sound with increasing precision. Music itself was also changing. Composers began to write more structured and complex pieces, requiring instruments capable of greater range and control. This created a quiet dialogue between musicians and instrument makers. As one pushed forward, the other adapted. Despite these advances, the process remained deeply human and tactile. Instruments were still made by hand, shaped by tools and guided by experience. Each one carried subtle variations, making every instrument unique. No two sounded exactly the same, and this individuality added to their character. There was also a sense of patience in this era. Crafting a single instrument could take weeks or months, with careful attention given to every stage. This slow process contributed to the calm and balanced sound that many of these instruments are still known for today. By the end of this period, many of the instruments we recognize today had taken their basic forms. The violin family, early keyboards, and refined wind instruments laid the foundation for modern music. Their designs have endured for centuries, a testament to the quiet perfection achieved during this time. In the next part, we will explore how musical instruments expanded in power and scale during the Industrial Age, becoming louder, more accessible, and more widely distributed than ever before. The quiet expansion of musical instruments, power, industry, and new possibilities. As the world entered the Industrial Age, musical instruments began to change in ways that were both subtle and profound. For centuries, instruments had been crafted slowly by hand, each one unique. But now, new tools, machines, and materials allowed for greater consistency, stronger structures, and entirely new forms of sound. The quiet art of instrument making did not disappear, it evolved. Workshops grew into small factories, where parts of instruments could be produced with remarkable precision. This did not remove craftsmanship, but reshaped it. Makers could now focus on refining specific elements while relying on standardized components. Instruments became more consistent in quality, allowing musicians to trust that a violin, piano, or flute would behave in predictable ways. One of the most noticeable changes was the increase in volume and projection. As concert halls became larger and audiences grew, instruments needed to be heard across greater distances. Pianos were reinforced with metal frames, allowing strings to be stretched with greater tension, producing louder and more powerful tones. Brass instruments were redesigned to project sound more clearly, filling large spaces with ease. New materials also began to appear. Metal, which had once been used sparingly, became more central in instrument construction. Steel strings replaced softer materials, creating brighter and more durable sound. Keys, valves, and mechanical systems were improved, making instruments easier to play and more responsive to subtle movements. Wind instruments experienced significant innovation. The introduction of valve systems allowed musicians to play a wider range of notes smoothly. Instead of relying only on finger holes, players could now control airflow through complex pathways inside the instrument. This expanded musical possibilities and allowed for more expressive performances. The piano, in particular, became a symbol of this era. Its internal structure grew more complex, combining wood, metal, and precise mechanics into a single instrument capable of great dynamic range. A gentle touch could produce a soft whisper of sound, while a stronger strike could fill an entire hall. This contrast between delicacy and power made it one of the most versatile instruments ever created. Mass production also made instruments more accessible. What was once limited to courts, churches, or wealthy patrons gradually became available to a wider public. Families could have instruments in their homes, and music became a part of everyday life for more people than ever before. Despite these industrial changes, the essence of musical instruments remained the same. Sound was still created through vibration, strings, air, or surfaces set into motion. The difference was in control, scale, and consistency. Instruments became more reliable partners for musicians, capable of responding with precision to every gesture. There was also a quiet balance between tradition and innovation. Many designs from earlier centuries were preserved, even as new technologies were introduced. Instrument makers respected the knowledge passed down through generations, carefully integrating it with modern techniques. This period marked a turning point. Instruments were no longer only handcrafted objects of art. They became part of a larger system of production, distribution, and performance. Music itself began to reach wider audiences, carried by instruments that were stronger, louder, and more adaptable. In the next part, we will explore how the modern era introduced entirely new categories of instruments, including electronic sound, and how technology reshaped the very definition of music itself. The quiet transformation of musical instruments, electricity, innovation, and new sound worlds. As the modern era unfolded, musical instruments entered a completely new dimension, one shaped not only by physical materials, but by electricity and technology. For the first time in history, sound no longer depended solely on wood, strings, or air. It could now be generated, modified, and amplified through entirely new means. This shift did not replace traditional instruments, but expanded the possibilities of music in ways that had never been imagined before. One of the earliest transformations came with the ability to amplify sound. Acoustic instruments, which once relied on natural resonance, could now be connected to microphones and speakers. This allowed even the quietest tones to be heard across vast spaces. A gentle pluck of a string or a soft breath into a flute could fill an entire concert hall, preserving subtle details while increasing reach. The invention of electronic instruments marked a turning point. Instruments such as synthesizers did not rely on vibrating strings or air columns. Instead, they generated sound using electrical signals. These signals could be shaped into waves, creating tones that ranged from soft and natural to entirely new and otherworldly. For the first time, musicians could design sounds that had never existed in nature. The electric guitar became one of the most iconic instruments of this era. By converting string vibrations into electrical signals, it allowed players to shape their sound through amplifiers and effects. A single note could be clean and gentle, or transformed into something powerful and intense. This flexibility gave musicians a new level of control over expression. Another quiet revolution came from recording technology. Sound could now be captured, stored, and replayed. This changed not only how music was shared, but how it was created. Musicians could layer sounds, experiment with timing, and refine their work over multiple takes. Instruments were no longer limited to live performance. They became part of a larger creative process. Digital technology pushed these possibilities even further. Computers and software allowed instruments to exist entirely in virtual form. A single keyboard could imitate dozens of instruments, from pianos and violins to entirely synthetic sounds. This made music creation more accessible, allowing individuals to explore complex compositions without needing a full ensemble. Despite these changes, the essence of musical instruments remained connected to human interaction. Whether pressing a key, turning a knob, or adjusting a digital control, the musician remained at the center. Technology expanded the range of sound, but it still responded to human intention. There is also a unique calmness in electronic sound design. Slow, evolving tones, ambient textures, and gentle rhythms can create deeply relaxing soundscapes. These sounds are often used in meditation, film, and background music, showing how modern instruments can shape not only music, but atmosphere itself. Interestingly, traditional and electronic instruments often coexist rather than compete. A modern composition might combine acoustic strings with digital layers, blending the warmth of natural sound with the precision of technology. This fusion creates a balance between past and future. Instruments are no longer limited by physical form. Sound can be shaped in ways that are invisible, existing as signals and data. Yet even in this abstract form, it continues to carry emotion, rhythm, and meaning. As we move into the next part, we will explore how musical instruments influence human emotion and the mind, and why certain sounds can feel so calming, powerful, or deeply familiar. The quiet influence of musical instruments, sound, emotion, and the human mind. Beyond their physical form and technical evolution, musical instruments hold a unique and subtle power, the ability to influence how we feel, think, and even how we perceive time. A single tone, played gently, can calm the mind. A sequence of notes can evoke memories, emotions, and images without the need for words. This quiet influence has accompanied humanity for thousands of years. When a musical instrument produces sound, it creates vibrations that travel through the air and reach the human ear. These vibrations are translated into electrical signals in the brain, where they are interpreted as sound. But this process is not purely mechanical. The brain responds emotionally as well, connecting sounds to past experiences, expectations, and internal states. Certain instruments are often associated with calmness and relaxation. Soft-string instruments, such as the violin or harp, produce smooth, continuous tones that can feel soothing. Wind instruments, like flutes, create gentle, flowing sounds that resemble natural elements such as wind or breath. These qualities make them especially effective in relaxing environments. Rhythm also plays a powerful role. Slow, steady rhythms can encourage the body to relax, sometimes even influencing heart rate and breathing patterns. This is why simple percussion patterns or repetitive musical phrases are often used in meditation and sleep-focused music. The predictability of rhythm creates a sense of safety and stability. Interestingly, the human brain is highly sensitive to patterns in sound. It naturally seeks structure, repetition, and variation. Musical instruments provide these patterns in a balanced way, enough repetition to feel familiar, but enough variation to remain interesting. This balance helps maintain attention without creating tension. There is also a connection between music and memory. Certain sounds or melodies can instantly bring back moments from the past. Instruments act as carriers of these memories, even when the listener is not consciously aware of it. A simple sequence of notes can feel deeply personal, even if it is heard for the first time. In modern life, Musical instruments are often used intentionally to shape environments. Soft piano music in a quiet room, ambient electronic tones in a workspace, or gentle acoustic sounds in the background of a video. All of these influence mood in subtle ways. Instruments are not only tools for performance, but tools for atmosphere. The tactile interaction with instruments also contributes to their calming effect. The act of pressing a key, plucking a string, or tapping a surface creates a direct connection between movement and sound. This immediate feedback can be grounding, helping to focus attention and reduce mental noise. Scientific research continues to explore how sound affects the brain, but many of its effects are already deeply familiar. People instinctively turn to music to relax, concentrate, or process emotions. Instruments are at the center of this experience, acting as bridges between physical action and emotional response. What makes musical instruments especially remarkable is that they do not require words to communicate. A melody can be understood across cultures and languages. This universality allows instruments to connect people in a quiet, almost effortless way.